Okay, I'd like to share some of my thoughts with you about the program as a bit of a wrap up. I'm not too good at speaking off the cuff, so I've made some notes and I'm just going to basically read through them. I'll try and make sure I don't sound too wooden as I do it. I've also just spent a whole lot of time trying to fix the sound quality for this video without much luck, so I'm really sorry if the playback sounds not like it should do. Nothing I can do about that, sorry. To start with, I just wanted to say a few things about my experience working with Anya. It's been challenging and it's been fun and it's been pretty educational for me too. Anya is younger than the other writers I was working with last time I mentored, which might sound like a fairly shallow thing to focus on to start off with, but in my mind one of her strengths is tied in with her youth. In my opinion, Anya writes from a position of confidence within her own culture, which is the culture of her readers, in which you could maybe loosely call youth culture. She writes about outsiders like a lot of young adult writers do. The protagonists are essentially outsiders, and she does it really well. But the important thing is that to know the outsider, you have to know the majority culture first. You need to know what it looks like and how it works and what its weaknesses are, and Anya does that very keenly. She's right there in the middle of the culture, observing it and writing what she sees. When I say that, I mean it in two senses, or at least in two different conceptual places. And in the 21st century, we all occupy those two places to a certain extent because one's the physical world and the other's the online, abstract world. Anya's comfortable online in a way that's almost natural to me, but it's not quite. I'm just a little bit too old to be a native online. Anya's writing background is an online community. It's an active and a discerning one. It's a huge benefit, I think, if you're a writer, to have a community like that behind you while you're in the process of creating. And it's just as critical, if not more critical, to have that community behind you when you bring a finished product to a readership. In the very best cases, your readership is going to be right there waiting for you. I think that system's a really significant one in the new age of publishing, and Anya's already comfortable in that world. The second sense I'm talking about when I say that Anya's strength is her youth is the sense that she knows her readership. In saying that, I'm working on the assumption that, at least for the length of this project, Anya's writing for young adults, and it did take us a while at the start to establish that for sure. I'm glad we started off on that footing because Anya writes young adult fiction very well. She's not far at all from the culture that she's exploring. In fact, she's basically in the middle of it, which is more than you can say for some young adult writers. She's a very keen observer of youth culture. She knows the way that her characters talk to each other. She knows what motivates them. And she knows what's important to them and what isn't. For example, finding out who you are is traditionally something that's very important to a young adult character. But someone's sexuality, whether they like boys or girls, is ultimately not so important, as long as people end up who they're meant to end up with. That's definitely the case in the world of Anya's novel, and in that respect, the book reveals Anya's fanfiction origins. In fanfiction, it really doesn't matter who likes who in terms of gender. It's a lot more important how people act on their desires. We talked about this quite a bit over the course of the program, and in one of her emails to me, Anya made the comment that society, in the sense of mainstream society, is stupid in the way that everything has to be male or female orientated. She said, why can't we just be people? What's wrong with a guy liking dresses or a girl liking sports and tracks? Why does there have to be something wrong with them? I love that attitude, and I love how it's become one of the key messages in Anya's book. It's a strong, positive, healthy message to be sending to young readers. It's a message of hope, and it tends to be a message associated with youth culture, which is why I'm talking about it in this context. But it needs to be spread more widely, I reckon. My own daughter is 2 years old, and these sorts of issues are often in my mind as I wonder about what sort of world she's growing up in. I'm probably getting a bit subjective here, so I'm going to move on. I also wanted to talk a little bit about what I've learned over the course of this program. A well-functioning relationship between a mentor and a mentee should always involve some learning on both sides, I think. That's definitely been the case here for me, and I thought it might be interesting to share a few things that I've taken from this program. Working with Anya has made me think about young adult writing as a genre. It's an area I haven't had a lot to do with up until now. Over the course of this program, in order to best help Anya, I've read some interesting things about what young adult writing is, and what it potentially could or should be. I think there's a misunderstanding out there that holds that young adult books can be a little bit controversial, but they shouldn't be too gritty. It's the idea that there can be sex and violence, but it shouldn't be too explicit or disturbing. I read quite a bit online that got me thinking the exact opposite. In the best young adult books, and definitely I think in the most popular ones, you're likely to actually find more potentially disturbing material than in an average adult novel. When you stop to think about it, it makes sense. Of course your average teenager knows what sex is, and knows a fair bit about drugs and violence and other nasty things. They're not looking for stories that shelter them from that. More likely, they're looking for stories that deal with it in a direct and honest way that helps them process those big new issues and come to understand them in the context of their own lives, whether or not their own personal experience includes that heavy stuff. One thing I've really enjoyed about Anya's writing is the way it doesn't apologize for the grown-up bits. It doesn't shy away from them. Rather, it celebrates them and depicts them with honesty and clarity and a little bit of humour. It's what some people call edgy young adult writing, and Anya does it very well. I'm just going to stop there to give my voice a break. I'll be back again soon.